wanted to do something a little different today. Instead of doing a profile of a person who was a creator behind the paperbacks that I like to read, and presumably you like to read too, I thought that maybe I would kind of do a little overview of the works of one particular writer who was a big name in the pulp paperback industry. I'm of course talking about John D. MacDonald. I think if you read old crime paperbacks, that name should not be foreign to you. Although I have to say that I did not know it before I started reading these vintage paperbacks. True confessions, I was a page at the local library when I was in high school, and I do not remember shelving John D. MacDonald's books. I remember, some of the names. Stephen King was big, Nora Roberts, James Michener. Those were sort of some of the names that I remember shelving. Skinny Legs and All by Tom Robbins, that was a big one at the time. But I don't remember shelving John D. MacDonald. So I don't know if by then, we're talking 91 to 93, his star had started to wane. He's definitely made a name for himself while he was writing, and I think his influence is still felt today. I know that Stephen King counts himself as one of MacDonald's big fans. So, and you can count me in that boat too. I rather like these books. So I thought I'd look at books from his first 10 years of writing, when he was just starting out. Now, I'm not going to go through all the books that he wrote during those first 10 years, because actually he wrote 29 books in those 10 years. So that's almost 3 books a year. That's ridiculous. And so I'm just going to do a nice solid 6 of those 29 to kind of get an idea of what was he doing, all that stuff. This is before Travis McGee. He had not created that character yet. That's kind of the character that most people think of when they think of Travis McGee. You think of Edgar Rice Burroughs, you think of Tarzan. You think of Arthur Conan Doyle, you think of Sherlock Holmes. You think of John MacDonald, you think of Travis McGee. But actually, truth be known, I have not yet read a Travis McGee book. I own several, but I haven't cracked them yet. So I am ignorant of McGee and his ways, aside from I know he's a treasure finder from Florida who thinks a lot of deep thoughts in between the mysteries, but I actually haven't experienced the book yet. So these are all pre-McGee during his first 10 years of writing. So the first book that I want to talk about is this one, Murder for the Bride. She may look like an angel, but she's a tramp. This is actually the second book that John D. MacDonald ever wrote, or at least I should say the second book that he published. It is a bit of a kind of spy-ish, international intrigue. So our main character here is Dylan. He is a newlywed. He's been married just a matter of weeks to his wife that he had only known for a few weeks. She's a total smoke show, and he's absolutely smitten. And right after they get married, he goes to work in Central America and gets a call that his wife is dead. And so he runs back home, and everyone starts telling him that his wife was actually no good, that he is idolizing her, but she is not that great. And he's really struck by this. He actually smacks a few people around because they tell him that his wife was no good. And even his best friend, this reporter girl that he's known for a long time, was like, I've kind of had a fishy feeling about her. So turns out that his wife Laura does have something of a sordid past. Maybe sordid isn't the right word, but a shady past. And he slowly starts to uncover that. And as he is figuring out his wife's past, other people, sort of string pullers and the like in different governments, are trying to find out some secret information that Laura had and that they think that she gave to Dylan, our narrator. I'm going to be honest, I was disappointed by this one. His second book he ever wrote, but this was the last MacDonald book that I've read so far. I'm not going to give up on him because of this one book, but I found it a little disappointing. The prose is good, and I like some of the observations and things like that, and it definitely is thrilling. Even this early, you can tell MacDonald knows how to write a fight and talk about what it's like to get beat up and get chased and all that stuff. But there was just a little bit of clunkiness. Maybe it's because he's kind of getting his sea legs here. He's trying to get into his groove. The plot felt a little contrived, but it was nevertheless, it was still fun, and I enjoyed it, but not as much as I've enjoyed the other stuff that he's written. Some of the things that we'll talk about coming up next. The villain in this book drinks room temperature gin with orange bitters, and I am a cocktail aficionado. Certainly not a mixologist, but I like a good cocktail, and I was tempted to make one of these, and maybe I still will. But the funny thing is that like everyone that describes this cocktail in this book talks about how it's just this tepid glass of swill, and everyone is disgusted when this guy orders it, and the narrator eventually orders it to kind of feel out, was the bad guy here? Does this sound like a familiar drink? And everyone's like, ugh, what are you doing? And that part was funny. So if nothing, at least it had this gross cocktail that made me laugh. So the second book that we'll talk about is Area of Suspicion. I remember this one well because it was the first MacDonald book that I read that I actually had like a copy in my hands. I got this in a lot from a person who was selling pulps out of Portugal, and this was probably the best book in the lot. So this one is from 54. Murder for the Bride is from 51. So this is he still hasn't even been writing for 5 years yet, and he's put out this book. It's better than Murder for the Bride. I could honestly say that the books get progressively better, spoiler alert, during these first 10 years. At least in my opinion, they get better. Area of Suspicion follows the adventures of Gavin Dean. A number of years ago, before the story starts, Gavin found his fiancée in his brother's arms, or playing Parcheesi, as my college roommate used to call it. And brokenhearted, Gavin leaves the state, leaves the city, leaves home. He goes to Florida to be a beach bum and hangs out there in the sand for a number of years. And then the news comes that his brother is dead. Someone shot him in the back of the head. So he returns back home to figure out what really happened to his brother, to kind of face the corporate raiders that are trying to take over the family business, and to confront this, again, total smoke show of his ex-fiancée, now I guess you could say the widow, his brother's widow. So there's choices to be made of what to do with these corporate raiders, and he's got to figure out what to do with the sexy ex, and not to mention the wholesome girl that's clamoring for his attention. And which one will he choose by the story's end? I bet you can't figure out which one, but I'm not going to spoil it. It's good. I think it gets a little heavy into the corporate raider stuff. I'm much more interested in the intrigue of the brother's murder, and also how does he resolve things with the sexy ex. And there's a little bit of international intrigue. I think it's interesting that these two early books of his that I have read both have this very Cold War kind of backdrop behind the books, and you are very much aware of the sort of machinations between the different nations. I didn't mean for that to rhyme. They're very personal and intimate stories, in more ways than one sometimes, but there's always this bigger picture backdrop, and I think maybe that's where these books actually drop the ball, is when MacDonald stays inside a character's head or deals with their passions and their troubles and things like that. He's dynamite, great writing. But when he starts to talk about the bigger picture, and the puppet masters behind all these things, that's where it sometimes falls for me, at least in these two books. So, Area of Suspicion was book number 2. From 1955 was Bullet for Cinderella. Now, this one is actually the first John D. MacDonald book that I read, but I don't actually have a physical copy of it. I read it off of the Internet Archive. I was just sort of exploring different authors and thought I'd try him, since I'd seen his name come up so much and seen so many really cool McGinnis covers for his novels and the like. And so I tried this one, and I have to say this was a great thriller. Bullet for Cinderella is a good book. I might even buy a hard copy so that I can loan it out to people if they, some of my friends are like, hey, give me a nice little pulp story. That'll totally fit the bill. So in this one, the protagonist is a former POW from the Korean War, and he comes back to his hometown mainly because one of his comrades in the war was, and I think he was also a POW, was telling him about this cache of money that he had hidden in sort of the wilds around this small town. So he's coming back, and the idea was that his fallen comrade was like, okay, I'm not going to make it back. You go find this money. You're a good dude. It's yours. So he goes back, and he's trying to put together the clues about where this money is hidden. But at the same time, there's another guy who was also fighting in Korea with them, and he knows about the story about the money, and he is trying to get the money too, and he is a bad dude. I mean, this is a great villain. You just hate him. And it's not even like you love to hate him kind of thing. It's not like a, Dr. Smith in Lost in Space, where you're like, oh, can't wait for him to get on the screen, or on the page in this case. This is like a guy, and you're just like, oof, I really hope this guy gets it at the end, because he's a terrible person. The villain actually really helps this book become the page turner that it is. And I'm also a total sucker for a treasure hunt. If you have a big cache of loot that the characters are chasing to find, I am in, man. I don't care about Soviet plans and bomb designs and things like that. Whatever, that's a fine MacGuffin for some people. Me, I want a treasure. So this book definitely gave me that in spades. Got to say that it did bum me out too towards the end that there's a character that I kind of like this character, and that character had been given a raw deal in the story, and they are getting a raw deal of an end too. And I don't think that they deserved it. And that's the one like, stain, the one blemish on this otherwise just excellent book is I guess I just was sort of a sucker for that character. So, Bullet for Cinderella, book number 3, good one. All right, book number 4 is You Live Once. This one came out in 1956, and it's fine. It's one of those books that totally hinges on the main character doing something really stupid at the beginning of the book, and that if he had not done that stupid thing, we wouldn't have had a book at all. But because he did do something stupid, now we're going to read 130 pages about him trying to make up for this really stupid act. So what does he do? So our main character is Clint in this book. Clint's boss is married. Clint is single, but he's a total horn dog, and has eyes for everything with a nice pair of legs and other pairs of things. And his boss is married, but he has this thing for this girl, Mary. And so the boss insists that Clint and Mary and the boss and his wife, they go on this double date and have a grand old time, kind of so that the boss can, not have an affair, but maybe having an emotional affair with Mary while they're at this meal. Next morning, Clint finds Mary dead in his closet. And now most people, well, maybe not most people, I don't know. I just know me. And if I found a dead acquaintance in my closet, even though it was my closet, I would totally call the cops and be like, there's a dead body here, get it out of here, and, good luck finding the killer. I'm willing to, I know, this is what Clint was like, well, they're going to automatically think I'm the killer. But would they? Would they? Well, anyway. So Clint doesn't call the cops. Instead, he takes the body and hides it in the woods, hoping that no one will ever see it and everyone will think that Mary just disappeared. And it doesn't go so hot after that. So, again, it all hinges on him making that stupid mistake. It's fun and suspenseful. Clint is trying to figure out who's trying to frame him. Who the real killer was that left this poor girl in his closet, the poor girl's body in his closet. But also to kind of keep a few steps ahead of everybody so that they don't realize that he's the one that threw her corpse in the forest. So you live once, and I think I'll just read that one once. Okay, next up is Death Trap. This one's from 57. So this one's about Hugh McReady. And he's in Europe doing some construction work. A lot of these characters are in other countries doing construction work. Murder for the Bride, he's in another country doing construction work. So you can see MacDonald has a few, maybe we could call them tropes. I know that's not the actual real word, but that's sort of the internet word for it these days, right? So he's a construction worker working in Europe, and he stumbles across a newspaper, and it talks about how his old crush's brother has been convicted for committing murder and is going to fry in the electric chair. And whether it's the thoughts of his crush or his thoughts of justice, or maybe he just was getting sick and tired to Europe. But Hugh runs back home, and it decides that he is going to solve the murder and find out who really did the killing. This one is, I would say this one is on we got the side of, we got great, okay, this one's more kind of in between okay and The ending was a little rushed, I think. I'm just going to say it. They use a hypnotism plot device, and me personally, I hate using hypnotism as a plot device, as a way to, find out some information. It's so, well, one, it's just so fake, like, I have a hard time believing that hypnosis really works that way, Now you will remember what you've forgotten, look into the coin of gold. I think of that episode of Scooby-Doo with the clown, right? And he's hypnotizing people and stuff. And I just have a hard time swallowing it. We did have a hypnotist come to my high school when I was there, and he did hypnotize people and made them do goofy things like, your neighbor stinks, and when you wake up, they'll smell bad, or you will cluck like a chicken, and blah, blah, blah. But I don't know if any of that was real, and to make it worse, that's not the kind of hypnosis that happens here in Death Trap. We're not talking about chicken cluckings and your neighbor stinks. We're talking about, remembering old stuff. So that kind of put a damper on all of it. So it's still, action scenes, still solid. Hugh gets beat up so much, and it's written with such delicious prose and verve that you kind of almost, you love it when he gets his butt kicked, because it's good writing. So yeah, kind of a lousy ending, and a rushed ending, but I had lots of fun getting up to that point. And the last book that I'm going to talk about in this video is the best one, and that's Deadly Welcome. I loved this one. This is actually the second John D. MacDonald novel that I ever read. I also read it on Internet Archive, but you can see I bought a copy of my own so that I can loan it out if someone wants it, or I can read it again down the line. I do not like this cover. It's kind of this strange scene of this girl, and it almost looks like she's in front of like some Gestapo guy or something like that. I think that's supposed to be the bad cop in the story, but whatever. The version on Internet Archive was the Dell version of Deadly Welcome, and that had a great cover by Robert McGinnis. If I can get a copy of that one, that'd be fine. And also there's a later edition that also has a nice cover too. Actually, I liked this book so much that that later edition I sent to a friend, and he loved it too. So you're getting double endorsement for one book, Deadly Welcome. This is easily the best of these books that I've read from the beginning of John D. MacDonald's career. In some ways, you could say it is a redo of A Bullet for Cinderella. You again have this guy returning home and is trying to find something after he's been gone for a while. But in this case, actually, he left home in shame. There was sort of a scandal at work. He was not at fault, but everyone blamed him, or at least enough people blamed him that he decided to take off, so he does. But now the military wants him to find someone who is hiding out in his old home. And along the way, he meets a cute girl, and he also meets the bad guy, who in this case is this bad cop. And it's another one of those really great bad guys. I mean, you read enough of these and you start to see some patterns in how it goes, you know, sort of like the guy gets to where he needs to go, he meets the bad guy kicks the tar out of him, and so now you hate the bad guy even more, but you realize that this isn't going to be easy for the hero, and this book does follow those beats, but it does it so well. It's so good. I really like Deadly Welcome, and I will read that one again in a heartbeat. So actually, I'm ending on the best one of these 6. It's a little bit of a curve like this, but it's definitely going up. And I could see that MacDonald was slowly getting better, book by book by book, year by year by year, and then he ends with this dynamite, Deadly Welcome. It will be interesting to look at the next 10 years of his career, and also to look at the Travis McGee books. Maybe those will be, you know, I'll need some time to read those books. I've read some of his later non-Travis McGee books, like The Last One Left, and a couple of those, where you can see he's less interested in the intrigue and he's more interested in character, which is fine, because he's really good at inventing characters. If John D. MacDonald really has, you know, his writing strengths are that he's really good at inventing a character and making them pretty round, and he's also really good at writing action scenes and talking about how our heroes are getting the snot beaten out of them. Have you read any McGee? Should I read them all in order, or can I skip around a bit? Right now I have the one that's pink and the one that's lavender. I should have gone to my bookshelf and checked before I pressed record. But anyway, do you have a favorite non-McGee book by John D. MacDonald that you would recommend? Or have you read one of these and you have a completely different opinion than I do, and you need to let the world know, no, Benjamin is wrong. Death Trap is great. I am pro-hypnosis. I've been hypnotized and revealed my deepest hidden secrets. It works. It's true. Benjamin, you don't know what you're talking about. Go ahead, put that in the comments. Let's have some dialogue going on here. So, that's it for this video, and hopefully you've been introduced to some titles that maybe you're tempted to check out. See you next time.